All right, so to now get an understanding of the situation in Lesotho, we have in studio now political expert on Africa with a great insight really into the continental politics, Dr. Victor Shale from Charleston Consultant. Good afternoon to you, Dada. Thank you so much for coming through.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me this afternoon.
All right, so your take on the latest coming out of Lesotho. The Prime Minister was expected to appear in court, but we understand apparently he's here in South Africa seeking medical attention.
Well, Lesotho never disappoints when it comes to political acrobatics, and this is one of the never-ending stanzas regarding politics in Lesotho. But back to your point, I think what you see unfolding in Lesotho is, I think, a combat of political strategies of the various sections, especially within the leading party in the coalition government, the All Basotho Convention. So yes, the Prime Minister was expected to appear in court, but obviously his coming to South Africa today especially is not accidental. I think it's part of the counter strategies to ensure that they can buy time.
That is, I think, what many people are saying, that that similar thing happened to the First Lady when she was sought by police. She had fled to South Africa, so it's a similar pattern there.
Yes, I think they are not going to be readily available to surrender themselves before the courts of law, because this thing goes beyond the legal issue that is tabled by the police at the moment. It is a deep political battle that I think is going to be won outside the courts of law more than in the courts of law.
So this political battle that you're referring to, Dr. Shale, is it within the ruling ABC itself? Because we understand that there are two factions. You have a group that's sympathetic to the Prime Minister himself, and you have a group that's sympathetic to Professor Mahao.
For the longest time, at least up to I think February last year, the Prime Minister's faction had the upper hand. But at the time when there was a new executive committee of that party coming into power, the tables were turned, and from that time on the two factions have really been at each other's throats. And so yes, this is a continuation of that, but the other faction that is led by the deputy leader seems to have the upper hand, especially now that the Prime Minister has these personal troubles with the law that he has to deal with.
But what's going to happen going forward? I mean, you have the Prime Minister announcing yesterday that he will effectively step down at the end of July. Yes. So with the ongoing infightings within the ABC itself, what is likely to happen going forward?
My sense is that really the timing even of his departure is dependent very much on the permutations in terms of what happens both within the party but also within Parliament, because the factionalism does not only end within the party, but it goes into Parliament, where his party has to then obviously seek support from some opposition parties, and so it depends on which faction gets more support in Parliament. So at the end of the day, I suspect that this is going to really depend to a large extent on which of the two factions actually get sufficient numbers in Parliament, because that's where the real battle will be in terms of when he goes, but also who succeeds him. Yeah.
But then, really, holistically looking into what is happening now in the Mountain Kingdom, what does this generally say about a notion really of coalitions on the African continent as a whole?
Well, first it proves the saying that coalitions are usually fragile. They are never stable, and so we see this unfolding in Lesotho. It's a clear manifestation of the complications of coalition politics. But over and above, you also have an element of political factionalism, which also usually is always to the detriment of the country's development trajectory. Because at the end of the day, looking at what we see in the news in Lesotho, clearly the people of Lesotho are the losers here. And this means that Lesotho will remain on the SADC agenda for an extended period of time. But also in terms of coalition politics, both in the region and outside the region, What this says is that we need to tread with care when we recommend political parties to coalesce if there are divisions. Just a few days ago, the Sudanese leadership have resolved to go into coalition as a way of mitigating the fallout between Riek Machar and Salva Kiir. So the same problems that you are seeing in Lesotho, there are lessons to be learned in terms of how this can be managed, but also what is it that need not to be done. So the omissions and commissions of leaders in coalition politics is something that perhaps Lesotho offers some good insights into.
All right. Now, very quickly, there's been a pattern in Lesotho that parties that are in government never get to finish their term. Are we likely to see fresh elections in the country, more so taking into consideration the political infightings within the ABC?
Well, the challenge with that is that at the moment, since 2012, there's really no clear, strong, single political party in Lesotho. Political parties need each other to be able to form government. Now, depending again on the permutations that I said about Parliament when it convenes, it could as well be as one of the possibilities that if one faction gets sufficient numbers, they may be able to either have a motion of no confidence in the Prime Minister or actually may lead to Parliament being dissolved. But I think that is a bit far-fetched. The other problem, I think, with Lesotho is that currently they do not have an electoral commission.
So they can't go on.
They really, if they were to dissolve Parliament, elections are not an option because they don't have an electoral commission. And if they were to put one, quickly, I don't think they would deliver a credible election. So perhaps the concessions that are being made by different sides in trying to find a political solution may be the way to go, and hopefully also save the country from the unnecessary election expenditure.
All right. So I suppose, as we say in Soto, or wait and see what happens going forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, there you have it, Dr. Victor Shale from Shale Stone, consultant, talking to us about the situation in Lesotho. To the Northwest Province we go now, Peter.